At the making of this video, the Indiana Pacers are currently 33-36, and they're currently the 9th seed in the Eastern Conference. And I'm pretty sure most Pacers fans would agree with me when I say that this has been a pretty disappointing year for the Pacers, because most people would have expected they would have for sure been in the playoffs. But with them being in the play-in tournament this season, it brings up the question of what's next for their future. So in today's video, I'll be discussing whether or not the Pacers should rebuild, and I give us some reasons to why they should rebuild and some reasons to why they shouldn't rebuild. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and to help me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. And comment on this video, start a conversation with me as I do respond to all of my comments and play that intro. To start the video, I'll be giving reasons to why I think the Indiana Pacers shouldn't rebuild. And the first reason is basically because this is simply a team that is a very talented roster that I truly believe could be solid in the Eastern Conference. Because this is a team that already has an all-star level player in Domantas Sabonis, who's a guy who I think is pretty underrated and can be a multiple-time all-star for the next few seasons. As this year, he's been averaging 21 points and 6 assists, along with over 10 rebounds on great efficiency. So they already have an all-star level player, but beside him they have another player who's a fringe all-star caliber player in Malcolm Brogdon, who I also think is underrated, because this season he's been averaging 21 points and 7 assists on good efficiency, and he's just a player who makes a bunch of smart plays and plays like a fringe all-star. So right off the bat, this is a roster with 2 players who are on an all-star level, which is better than a lot of teams in the league, and especially a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference. And surrounding those players, they have a guy in TJ Warren who's a high teen scorer, and this whole season he's been injured. So I think they could have been way better with him on the team. And this season, going into the future, he could be a really solid player to keep. They also have Miles Turner, who will be in the discussion for the Defensive Player of the Year for the foreseeable future. And although at this point in his career, his offense has been a little bit disappointing, him being this great on defense kind of makes up for it, because he's legitimately a top 5 defender in the league. And he still is kind of young, so it's going to help them for a long time if they choose not to rebuild. This team also has Charis Levert, who was a guy who I think could be a high teen scorer, and he might have the potential to be an NBA All-Star. And I would give the Pacers potentially a big 3 of 3 All-Stars or fringe All-Stars. And maybe even TJ Warren could take a big jump, because we haven't seen him have a full season since his excellent bubble games, so we never know. And surrounding their main players, they have guys like Justin Holiday and Aaron Holiday, who are solid players, and Doug McDermott's a really good shooter, and they just have a solid roster throughout. So a reason to not completely shut it down and rebuild is the fact that this Pacers team is a team with a lot of talent, and if they could just put it all together for one season, they could have some pretty good seasons. And if they rebuild, they're not guaranteed to get another roster that's even close to this good. But a reason the Indiana Pacers might actually want to rebuild is the fact that right now the top of the Eastern Conference is very strong and top heavy, because there's teams like the Nets who will be contenders for at least the next 3 seasons. Teams like the Bucks with Giannis will continue to contend for the next seasons as well, and teams like Philadelphia will contend for the next few years with their young duo of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, along with great role players. And even the Boston Celtics are a team that has 2 of the best young players in the league in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. If they could fix up their roster and get better supporting pieces, they could be contenders. And let me not forget about the Miami Heat, who although their best player, Jimmy Butler, is above the age of 30, they still have young guys like Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. So the conference is as tough as it ever has been, and it will continue to stay that way for the next few seasons. So there's a chance that the Pacers don't feel like they can compete with teams like that, and their mindset would be to just rebuild and try and get a better team for the future when some of those other teams star players depart or just get a little bit older, because right now it doesn't seem possible for Indiana to beat those teams. And although I don't think Indiana has much of a chance to actually defeat those teams in the playoffs unless they make some drastic moves, I think they could compete with them to a certain degree. But this is a valid reason, because if Indiana doesn't want to just stay an average team, which is what they are right now, rebuilding would probably make the most sense. But another reason the Indiana Pacers shouldn't rebuild is the fact that Indiana is a team that has really struggled with injuries over the past few seasons, as they have been getting them arguably the worst in the league. Because if we remember, in the 2017-2018 season, the Pacers surprised everyone, making it to the playoffs by getting led by Victor Oladipo, and they pushed LeBron's Cavs all the way to a Game 7. And everyone thought they were on the come up and all of that. And then in 2018-2019 season, they were doing well, but then Victor Oladipo had a devastating injury which would ruin his career, or maybe not necessarily ruin it, but negatively affect it drastically. So then they would lose in the first round to the Boston Celtics, getting swept in the first round. And then the next season, the 2019-2020 season, the Pacers were having a solid year, and then right before the playoffs, Domantas Sabonis, their best player, would get injured. And when the Pacers got swept by the Heat, it just looked terrible. And then on top of that, this season, TJ Warren has missed the whole year, and a lot of their players have dealt with injury. So maybe it's a case of this team hasn't had a proper, healthy season in the last 3 years, and we should give them more time to develop and see what they're actually like. Because this Pacers team might actually be really good, and we just don't know it. And if I'm being honest, I really do believe if this Pacers team is healthy, they could be a very good team who could have some 50+ win seasons. The second reason the Pacers should maybe rebuild is the fact that this is a roster that, as I said, is a very talented roster, which actually means that a lot of their players could easily get moved for a lot of assets. And if they completely strip down their roster, and if they did it correctly, I could honestly see a world where Indiana turns into a team that looks like they have one of the brightest futures in the league. Because the Domantas Sabonis is a player who a lot of teams would be interested in somewhat, because his contract isn't ginormous, and he's a player who could fit well on a lot of teams. And since he's an all-star, he's decently young on a solid contract, that honestly makes me think the Pacers could get one young player with potential, or even a couple of first-round picks for him. Malcolm Brogdon is a player who would be perfect for many teams, since he fits well with any star player or any team's offense, because he doesn't do too much, and he's a 20 points per game scorer. And I honestly think you could get a solid amount of first round picks and a young player for him. And if TJ Warren returns as a high teen scorer, you could probably get a first rounder or two for him, or maybe even a solid young player. And Miles Turner is a player who but to conclude the video, I honestly believe the Indiana Pacers shouldn't rebuild, because they do have a pretty solid roster that, especially in the Eastern Conference, could make a bit of noise. And I think they are just really struggling with injuries, and I don't think that them rebuilding guarantees them to be even as good as they are right now. Because if you look at it, it seems like the Sacramento Kings won't be making the playoffs for a long time, and they've been rebuilding for a decade and a half. So I think if this front office could get a different coach, because I don't know why they would have gotten rid of Nate McMillan, and if they can add some more role players, or maybe even another star level player, and just get a different culture in Indiana, they could be a solid team. But anyways guys, that's it for the video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with what I said in this video. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content, and tell me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. And comment on this video, start a conversation, as I do respond to all comments. And I'm out.